because I need the PowerPoint, please. Ah, it's there. Thank you. Good evening, and thank you. Thanks for the organizer and for you for being here, for giving me this opportunity to talk about the issue of Palestinian refugees and internally displaced persons. Actually, before going to talk about Palestinian refugees, let me introduce the organization that I work with in a few sentences. Badil Resource Center is a Palestinian human rights. Our focus is on the rights of Palestinian refugees and internally displaced persons. We produce research papers based on international law, and we have advocacy unit, legal advocacy unit. We do many advocacy activities at national level and international level as well. We have relations with many community-based organizations working with Palestinian refugees or supporting the rights of Palestinian refugees, not only in West Bank and Gaza, which is known now under international law as occupied Palestinian territory, but also in Palestine occupied in 1948, in Lebanon, Syria, over the world. We have a relation with such organizations. In short, let me say that concerned actors, political actors, don't like Badil. Israel considers us a terrorist organization because we are claiming and calling and advocating the right to return of Palestinian refugees. International community, I mean the Western powerful states, consider us extreme organization, and some of our donors also who have stopped funding us. And also the Palestinian Authority, actually they consider us annoying or naughty organization. So maybe this will clear who we are. I'm going to talk about 3 issues today. The scope of displacement of Palestinian people, and the contemporary policies of displacement, also about the root causes and peace process and the approaches adopted by international community in dealing with the Palestinian refugee issue, with the Palestinian cause in general, and specifically with the refugee question. So I'll start with the scope of displacement. Until today, Palestinian refugees and internally displaced persons are the largest and longest, refugee group over the world, and their case is the longest case in the nowadays. So when we talk about refugees and internally displaced persons, we have 2/3 of Palestinian people who have been displaced since 1948 until now. So you can imagine 2/3 of people have been displaced. Because of this, we believe that the Palestinian, this question is the core question when we talk about the Palestinian cause. This diagram shows the the numbers of Palestinian refugees during the period when they were displaced and how the number increased through the years. Actually, there have been 5 major waves of displacement. Started in 1917 when Britain occupied Palestine, and this occupation was transferred, legalized under the so-called mandate regime. So under the British mandate, more than 100,000 Palestinians were displaced because of the policies implemented by Britain at that time. Britain confiscated Palestinian land and transferred it to Jewish settlers at that time. Also oppressed Palestinian people during the time. Also enforced nationality law by which it denationalized tens of thousands of Palestinians based on that law. During the Nakba in 1948, more than 750,000 Palestinians were displaced at that time when Israel was created. And then Israeli military rule was imposed on Palestinians who remained inside Palestine, which became known as Israel. During that period, between 35 to 45,000 Palestinians were displaced. Most of them are Bedouin Palestinians from south of Palestine and north of Palestine. Also, more than 5,000 of refugees were killed during that time. Those refugees who tried to return to their homeland were killed by Israel. Also, during the war in 1967, more than 400,000 Palestinians were displaced and became refugees. Since 1967 until now, we call it ongoing Nakba. Israel has developed new policies causing forcible displacement. We call it, I recall what you said, my colleague, about voluntary displacement, but it's not voluntary. We call it in Palestine silent displacement. So Israel developed many policies. I'll talk about these policies which causes forcible displacement and forcible transfer. And because of this, we have inside Israel itself more than 415,000 Palestinians who are displaced. They have Israeli citizenship, but they are internally displaced. In West Bank and Gaza, there are more than 340,000 Palestinians who have been displaced because of these new policies implemented by Israel. As I said, Palestinian refugees is the largest group over the world. So you can see in this map where are they. And the problem here, for example, in Spain, when we were working on this map, we couldn't find clear records showing how many Palestinians in each state. So we could gather information from Germany, for example. It's estimate, also from Sweden, but we couldn't get clear registration or records showing how many Palestinian refugees are in Spain, not only in Spain, in other countries, of course. But this shows that there is no comprehensive registration of Palestinian refugees. And maybe this nowadays becomes very important because we are trying to trace those refugees who are fleeing from Syria or from Lebanon, other countries, and fleeing to Europe, maybe to New Zealand, maybe to United States. We are trying to follow them and register how many Palestinians, but it's really very, very difficult. Some are registered based on the country they came from, others registered as stateless persons, and some Palestinians, actually, because of the discriminatory policies implemented by these states in Europe, in United States, other states, because of this, the discrimination against Palestinians, they started to deny or let's say hide their nationality. So when we compare, for example, between the treatment that Syrian refugees get in European state and the treatment that Palestinian refugees who fled from Syria, the same war in Syria, we can notice that there is discrimination. So some Palestinians started to allege that they are Syrians, but unfortunately this complicates their situation because, you know, states have the records and they can cooperate, and later they discover that they are not really Syrian refugees, they are Palestinian refugees, so they get in trouble. We have many cases trying to follow in Sweden and Italy like these cases. So how this happened? Because I have a short time, I'll go quickly through this. So this was Palestine. If you see the green map, which was, we call it historic Palestine or mandatory Palestine. Through the time, the Zionist movement to implement its strategy, maximum land with minimum Palestinians, succeeded in changing the demographic composition of the country and changing the land ownership in Palestine. So through the years, you see the changes, and we have lost most of the land. Israel now controls over 85% of Palestine or historic Palestine. They are the Jewish Israeli people in Palestine consist of 52%, while Palestinians inside Palestine 48% nowadays. If we compare it to what was the case in 1948 and in 1917, it completely differs, and it shows what happened in Palestine. I'll jump to this slide just to talk about this issue. So the international community tries to convince us that what we face is only occupation. Israel occupied West Bank or Gaza Strip. And actually it's intentional, and we believe that international community is complicit in this issue simply because occupation as a legal framework under international law is not a crime. Just the occupying power must follow the international humanitarian law to follow these rules, and everything will be okay. So states or international community is not required to take any action to end the occupation. And because of this, we believe that until today, they insist that it's occupation. But in our analysis, we believe that what happened in Palestine and what we have in Palestine actually is a combination of colonization, colonialism and apartheid regime. So Israel regime is a combination of colonization and apartheid, and causes ongoing displacement of Palestinian people. How Israel managed to continue displacement of Palestinians? We, in our organization, pointed out 9 main policies that Israel developed and is still in force, and these policies causes displacement. And these policies, as you see in the slide, they are working together. It's not, they don't work separately, they work together. It's a regime imposed on Palestinian people. For example, denial of reparation. Until now, those refugees are denied their right to return. And those who are displaced inside Palestine, including those Palestinians who have Israeli citizenship inside Israel itself, are denied to return to their home villages. As I said, there are more than 415,000 Palestinians internally displaced in Israel, and some of them are living just 1 kilometer from their homes, original homes, from where they were displaced initially, and they are prevented from returning to their homes and to their villages. Also, the policy of denial of residency. Since 1967, Israel denied the residency of more than 40,000 Palestinian families. So if we calculate the number, they are more than 200,000 persons who have denied residency. Israel imposed many laws, for example, the Central of Life, that everyone in Jerusalem, this law targets those living in Jerusalem. So every Palestinian lives in Jerusalem has to prove that he is living in Jerusalem and he has never left Jerusalem, even if for a temporary period. So if someone has a work in Ramallah, in West Bank, or in another city, or traveled abroad, and couldn't prove that he has continuous residency in Jerusalem, he will lose his residency, and the family also will lose their residency in the city. Land confiscation, as I said, Israel now controls over 85% of Palestine. Denial of access to natural resources and services. Israel control over water, land, gas, the Dead Sea, also fishing in Gaza, and it invests in all these in cooperation with many international, multinational companies in West Bank, and prevent Palestinians from using their natural resources. For example, the Palestinian Authority itself is prevented from having water wells to derive water and to provide Palestinian cities. We have to buy water from Israel, and Israel dedicated the specific quota for every city, every town, every Palestinian city, every Palestinian town. And according to International World Bank, we get, for the Palestinian person, we get 30 liters a day, while the Israeli settlers get 75 liters per day. So this shows how they, and we get it, the price, I mean, more expensive than Israeli settlers. Discriminatory zoning and planning, yeah, they concentrated Palestinians. Israel has concentrated Palestinians in small communities separated by roads, by settlements, by bus roads, by railways, and by military bases. So you cannot find continuity among between Palestinian cities and towns. This concentration and separation causes not only displacement, but used by Israel to keep controlling over Palestinians and oppressing Palestinian people. Permit regime, you can imagine that Israel imposed on Palestinians 101 kind of permits. Permits for work, to have health care, to import, to export, to travel, to do anything in Palestine. You have to get a permit from Israel. And this regime of permits, of course, causes what we call coercive environment. And this is part of the suppression system, which is another policy, suppression of resistance. We are not talking only about the wars on Gaza. Also, we talk about night raids, arrest, closure, also curfews, killing in West Bank, a wide range of policies to suppress Palestinian people and to prevent them to resist this regime. Non-state actions, actually it's the settler attacks. When they attack Palestinian villages, they are supported by Israeli occupying forces. And also there are many quasi-state organizations like the Jewish National Fund, which control over land and cooperate with the Israeli government to suppress Palestinian people and to, for example, to invest in the natural resources or to control over land. For example, Jewish National Fund is considered a charity at international level, and it controls over 13% of historic Palestine lands. So this charity cooperate with Israeli government, and sometimes they transfer the land to private owner to invest, to private persons, companies, or individual to invest in this land. And the land controlled by this Jewish National Fund is for the dedicated, according to their statute, to the Israeli Jewish benefits only. So no Palestinian can benefit from these investments or these lands or projects implemented by such non-state actors. So what I want to say here that through these policies, Israel creates what we call coercive environment, which causes forcible displacement, because there is no genuine will to leave the area or to leave the town. Imagine that, for example, in a town, you need to have a permit from the Israeli authorities to have agricultural road, just to have agricultural road. You cannot do it without having or getting a permit from Israeli authorities. Imagine that a town has no electricity, and to have it, you have to apply for a permit for the Israeli authorities, occupying forces, to get this permit, and usually they deny. For the construction, to have a house, because demolition of houses is one of the policies, it falls under what we call zoning and planning. To build a house, you have to get a permit from Israeli authorities. And if you build it without a permit, it will be destroyed by Israeli authorities. And according to Israeli organizations, 98% of application for permit for construction permits are denied. So only we get 2% permits or applications for construction. So to conclude here, so this coercive environment forces people to leave. People need electricity, need water, need road, need the classroom for their children to, so they are concentrating Palestinian people from Area C, this area which is controlled completely by Israel, to areas fall under the control of Palestinian Authority. Because of this, we have this huge number of internally displaced persons. Just to go to international approaches in dealing with the Palestine cause, historically, without going back too much, international community has two approaches. First, the politically motivated approach, which is just management of the conflict. And the second approach is humanitarian aid, which deals with Palestinians as poor people who needs some funds, some help here and there, which is has not resulted in any tangible solution for Palestinians. We are advocating a human rights approach, which should start with the Palestinian refugee question, to recognize the Palestinian people inalienable rights, self-determination, and refugees' rights. Maybe in our discussion I can shed more light on these issues. They are rushing me, so that's it. Thank you. Thank you.